Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Gopi Channa Ballabha Giri Bharada Nandana Bhagavana Yashoda Nandana Rajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Rajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Banacha Jai Radha Madhava Jai Radha Madhava Yashoda Nandana Kavichandra Swami Yamuna Tira Banacha Yamuna Tira Banacha Jaya Radha Madhava Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga.
This video is Maharaj. We don't have a garland.
Huh?
Yes. There's no garland.
It's all right. Who needs a garland? What verse is it? 28?
28.
Huh?
Yeah.
Chapter 2, text 28. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Okay, chapter 2, third canto, text number 28. Kumarim Darshayam Chestam Prekshaniyam Vrajokasam Nudan Iva Hasan Mugda Bala Singhavalokana Kumarim Darshayam Chestam Prekshaniyam Vrajokasam Rudaniva Hasan Mugda Bala Singhavalokana Kumarim Darshayam Chestam Prakshaniyam Vrajokasam Rudaniva Hasan Mugda Bala Singhavalokana. Next.
Komarim Dharshayam Chetam Komarim Dharshayam Chetam Prikshaniyam Vrajokasam
Prikshaniyam Vrajokasam
Rudaniva Hasan Mugdha Bhala Simhavalokanaha Kumarim Dharshayam Chetam Prakshaniyam Vrajokasam Rudaniva Hasan Mugdha Bhala Simhavalokana Kumarim Dharshayam Chetam Prikshaniyam Vrajokasam Rudaniva Hasan Mugdha Bhala Simhavalokana.
Anyone else?
Komarim Dharshayam Chetam Prikshaniyam Vrajokasam Rudaniva Hasan Mugdha Bhala Simhavalokana.
Ladies, we're trying to get this TV fixed on it now. Oh, is it on there now? New York City. Bala Singhavalokana. Komarim, just suitable to childhood. Darsayam, while showing. Chestam, activities. Prekshaniyam, worthy to be seen. Vraja Okasham, by the inhabitants of the land of Vrindavan. Rudam, crying. Iva, just like. Hasan, laughing. Mugda, struck with wonder. Bala Singha, lion cub. Avalokana, looking like that. When the Lord displayed the activities just suitable for childhood, he was visible only to the residents of Vrindavan. Sometimes he would cry and sometimes laugh, just like a child, and while so doing, he would appear like a lion cub. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. If anyone wants to enjoy the childhood pastimes of the Lord, then he has to follow in the footsteps of the residents of Braj, like Nanda, Upananda, and other parental inhabitants. A child may insist on having something and cry like anything to get it, disturbing the whole neighborhood. And then immediately after achieving the desired goal, he laughs. Such crying and laughing is enjoyable to the parents and elderly members of the family. So the Lord would simultaneously cry and laugh in this way and merge his devotee parents in the humor of transcendental pleasure. These incidents are enjoyable only by the residents of Braj, like Nanda Maharaj, and not by the impersonalist worshippers of Brahman and Paramatma. Sometimes, when attacked in the forest by demons, Krishna would appear struck with wonder, but he looked on them like the cub of a lion and killed them. His childhood companions would also be struck with wonder, and when they came back home, they would narrate the story to their parents, and everyone would appreciate the qualities of their Krishna. Child Krishna did not belong only to his parents, Nanda and Yasoda. He was the son of all the elderly inhabitants of Vrindavan and the friend of all contemporary boys and girls. Everyone loved Krishna, and he was the life and soul of everyone, including the animals, the cows, and the calves. So that means the cows and calves are not included as animals. Something different. They're not like the forest animals. Because everyone loved Krishna. And Krishna had pet dog, 2 dogs, monkey, pet monkeys, and Radharani had other animals, of course mainly the parrots. Om Gyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksura Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavams Cha Shri Rupam Sajajatam Sahagana Raguna Tanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sabadutam Parijana Sahita Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitams Cha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shri Mate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desa Tarane Vanshakalpa Trubhyas Cha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha Namo Mahabharanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gora Trishe Namaha. Hey Krishna, Karuna Sindhu, Dina Bandhu Jagatpate, Gopesha Gopika, Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute, Tapta Kanchana Gaurange Radhe, Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu, Sute Devi Pranamami, Hari Priye. Jai Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam, Langayate Garim Tat Kripa, Tamaham Vande, Shri Gurun Dina Tarane, Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Banjarantam, Adhyaiva Me Visatu Manasaraja Hansan, Prana Prayama Samaye Kapavata Pittai, Kantavaro Danavido Smaranam Kataste. Prabhupada would say, let me die now. He translated that short. His servant said he would recite that quite often. That verse. In other words, let me die in good consciousness. Let me always be chanting the holy name and thinking of Krishna.
Where's that verse from, Maharaj?
Yeah. I remember when I first went on traveling Sankirtan, we didn't have very many cassettes, but I got a cassette player, which was very advanced at the time, and put it in my van. And there was a Prabhupada chanting that, but there was no purport or explanation. And he chanted it with such intense feeling. I just was wondering, what is that? What is it? And finally, I found it. All right. So today is actually like a super auspicious day in the history of the world, spiritually. The day that Prabhupada left for America, got on the boat. Anyway, we'll first talk a little bit about Krishna and Vrindavan. Krishna acted exactly like a child, but it's not like he was just play acting. He was actually a child. At the same time, if it need be, he could kill Putana and different Trinavarta or whatever came up, but as far as relationship with his parents, he's a child. That's what they wanted. With the coward boys, he was their friend. He would wrestle with them. Sometimes he'd be defeated. Sometimes the older boys would joke with him, tell him, if you go home when your mother calls you, we won't play with you anymore. Just like other boys and girls. And he had the girlfriends. Everybody, all the gopis from the time they were born, they loved Krishna. They always wanted Krishna as their husband. But so Krishna, he did all that. I don't know when the older coward men, and they started to believe that Krishna actually killed these demons. In the early time, they just thought Vishnu protected my baby, because of they were doing all kinds of yagyas. Nanda and Yasoda, it's still there. They had an Nrsimhamurti they worshipped to protect Krishna. Kind of a village, funky little Nrsimhamurti. And they did all kinds of pujas, and whenever Krishna was, that they didn't realize he killed the demons. The boys would tell the stories, and I think they would just think these are, boys. They have a lot of stories. But gradually it happened so many times, and they started to believe it. But Nanda would never believe, this is my son, and I have to chastise him, I have to teach him. Even though they said, he might be some great demigod, how can he be he might be a great yogi, impossible, he's always stealing sweets, what kind of yogi would do that? So Prabhupada has given us all this. It's amazing that, this is, people want to know what's the difference between, it depends on what country you're here, they want to know Christianity. China, they want to know what's the difference of Buddhism. The difference is what? It's Krishna. Other things, when you get to the, the behavior, regulative principles, the basic, the same. But Krishna is missing, especially this aspect of Krishna, because that's the real Krishna. Some have the idea of the all-powerful God, only they want to, please use your power to help me. My dear Lord, please do what I want. The churches in America, I don't see in the city here, but in the other towns, they put out a poster all week, like what the next week's sermon is going to be. They're getting people ready. So one said, everyone wants to serve God as an advisor. God, you should do like this, just do this, you should do that. God bless America. Remember when that really got a big thing after the 9/11, and Gauravani Prabhu had a song, what about the rest of the world? God bless America. What about everyone else, They all want to be blessed. Prabhupada, when people ask him, please pray for me or pray for my family, he said, I'm always praying for everybody. Don't have to make special efforts. Of course he would. Anyway, this is Krishna. These pastimes in Vrindavan are only seen by the residents of Raj. Of course, Brahma saw sometimes, Indra, maybe other demigods could witness without really understanding. But it wasn't like for everybody. But now it is, and Prabhupada made that incredible effort and super empowered writing to write that Krishna book. And Prabhupada himself said it's amazing. Because he said he didn't write it, Krishna wrote it. Because normally it wouldn't, Acharya wouldn't give the 10th canto to people until they realized the first 9 cantos. But Prabhupada blended in the full realization of the first 9 cantos of who is Krishna, and then also gave all these leelas with pictures. And there's always, like, you go to Vrindavan and there's so many temples full of pictures of Krishna's childhood and everything. It's not like, but putting it so many in a book, Prabhupada right away, every artist, can you paint this, And for every pastime in the Krishna book, he had a picture. Every chapter. Quite an amazing thing. And so we have all this knowledge because Prabhupada's, unbelievable mercy. I was just looking here in the calendar, and they put like half the Lilamrita or something about Prabhupada, leaving for America. Now the actual leaving, there's different stories. The story we have in the Lilamrita was nobody was there. Maybe somebody from the steamship company or something. Radhanath Swami talked to Prabhupada's son Vrindavan. He said he was there. But otherwise, Prabhupada was by himself. He had his little trunk with, a few clothes, but the books were on the boat, 200, or maybe some books went ahead of him, but all he had was the 200 first cantos sets. And Krishna, of course, no money, and he didn't know anybody in America. All he knew was this Agarwal had agreed to sponsor his visa. And, he had no idea if anybody was going to meet him. Communication was not very good. But the really amazing thing is that the preparation, what Prabhupada went through to get ready to go to America. Because he said from the time he met his guru, he was thinking about it. And that was, he was like 24 years old or something. And he was thinking, but he was thinking, I can't do it now. Because he was just married, I think he had the first child, he just started this job. And he tells us all these stories, his Leela, that he was thinking, all my godbrothers are always begging, so I will make a lot of money, then I'll use that for preaching. Because he was predicted he would make a lot of money. And started out, it looked that way. Prabhupada, very humbly, we have a few conversations where he's telling, he was offered some really big job, and he said I was really too proud, and he was demanding like huge salary or something, and so he didn't get that job. But he was still doing all right in one company, but then customers started not paying, and another man wanted his position and started saying that he was cheating, not that the people weren't paying. So Prabhupada, he often quoted that verse. What is that in Sanskrit? I always forget.
Yasyaham anugranami.
Yeah, yasyaham anugraham. When I really favor someone, that's what Krishna told Yudhishthira, I take away everything. Because Yudhishthira said, why, I'm a perfect king, never did anything sinful, why did this happen? I'm out in the forest here. And Krishna said, when I favor someone, I take away everything. No. So in Prabhupada's case, it was like Yudhishthira, I think anyway, not karma, is that Krishna was just using him to teach us so many things. So he had so much preparation to write the books, to be able to live, you know, to leave home. And he was writing by hand in the first. And when we read about the printing, you know, like for us it's like really inconceivable, but they had, you know, every letter was one little block, and then you have to put them in backwards, so when it prints it reads forward. And the printer had to do that, reading it handwritten, and then, so Prabhupada had to go so many times and check, and then if there's a mistake, you know, you don't just delete and fill it in, you have to move everything. You have to move so many things. So even in those first books, at the back there's erotica, you know, and there's a long list of errors, because they finally just, after 3 or 4 times, they just print it anyway. But still, those books, you know, Prabhupada, and that's later when he got to America. Then what to speak of getting transportation to America. He had no money. He was getting really small donations. We met one man, he was very famous in India at the time. He was composing almost all the music for Bollywood, O.P. Nair, the inimical O.P. Nair. And he was quite famous as a debauch and drunkard, you know, in Bollywood. And one of his friends brought Prabhupada to his office. He became friendly later, after he met devotees, and this was before Prabhupada went to America. He was in Bombay, and Prabhupada was trying to preach to him and show him the Bhagavatam or something. And he looked at his friend, he said, you know, what does he want? So he said, you know, so he gave Prabhupada 100 rupees, which was significant in that day. And Prabhupada gave him the book. He told me this, and he gave the book back. He said, I don't need the book, you know. So this went a few times, and then he wouldn't take the book, and Prabhupada gave the 100 rupees back. So then he, you know, as a Hindu, he understood, so he took the book.
Yeah, Prabhupada.
So that's how Prabhupada, but that was his in life, you know, trying to find his way to America. Finally then, in this thing there's a lot of, from Sumati Maraji. And Prabhupada was going to different places, and somehow he went there, and that's when he saw the Juhu land, because her house is on the beach, like down the road from the temple. And so when Prabhupada every day he'd come out to take the bus to Bombay, and he saw that land and thought this would be a good place for a temple.
The same plot.
Yeah, and why he would think of that, because it was a jungle and the area is not developed at all, except for some few. Now there's so many hotels on the beach, but then there was just 3 or 4. Few Bollywood people live out there on the beach. But he got that idea. It was long before he went to America. And he sat outside her place for a long time, and she noticed him, and, you know, asking the secretary, said, well, it's some sadhu, and, you know, and so she said, let him in, and then she's a very pious lady, she's in the Pushti Marg, and she really liked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was staying at her dormitory, where her workers stayed, and giving classes. and she liked his classes. And Prabhupada kept asking her to give him a ride to America. And she was saying, Swamiji, you'll die if you go there. But she also said she didn't really want him to leave. She liked his classes. She liked him, and she really believed that there'd be nothing for him to eat there, sadhu. I mean, I even met people in the 70s that came from Gujarati villages, and they had never heard of eating meat in their life. And when they got to America to study, people said, there's nothing else here, you have to eat meat. And they started eating meat until they met devotees. Everybody said there's nothing else, you have to eat meat in America. So she was really worried about Prabhupada. And Prabhupada I think she helped also with some, publishing. So he really had no idea how he was going to get to America, but somehow this Agarwal that he met told him, well, my son, he sponsored several, but no one ever came. So he asked his son, and again he signed the papers, that he would sponsor Bhaktivedanta Swami. And I think there was some communication between the two of them, but he didn't really expect Prabhupada to come. But just before he got on the boat, he somehow sent a telegram or something. Then there's a very complex history of, in those days, Indians were not traveling. And even a very rich man, they'd only let him change, practically nothing into dollars. And if you got to America, you couldn't change rupees. Now you can. Now the Indians have no problem, Just give it to my brother in India and I'll give you money in America. But it wasn't like that. So there's passport, so many different things that Prabhupada had to get. The visa, and there's something called the P form. If you look in the Lilamrita, there's a whole detailed history. It's here, but it's really too much, But Prabhupada just, got this at least sponsor. He tried to sell books in India, but like here it says he went to one bookstore, and Popular Book Depot on Grant Road. They said they couldn't take the books because they don't have much sales in religious books. He went to another shop, and the owner said we wouldn't be able to sell them. He went all around different temples. They welcomed him. They have a library, and they stock religious books. So we asked them. They said no. He went back to Delhi, trying to sell books. So the Ministry of External Affairs finally informed him that he got his no objection certificate for going to the U.S. And that was a whole thing, like here maybe you've had a little experience applying for welfare or something, but in India to do anything is really amazing. You just sit, and then they tell you, no, you have to go to another place, you have to go to another office, and the secretary's not here today, and it's just unlimited. So finally he got this. So he was surprised because he had not instigated any proceeding for leaving the country. So we asked what happened, and they showed him the statutory declaration signed by Mr. Gopal Agarwal of Butler, Pennsylvania. So just because he sent that paper in, they gave Prabhupada no objection that he could travel. But then in order to travel, he needed all these other papers. Prabhupada has simply asked this one man, why don't you ask your son? So after 3 or 4 months, he got the certificate from the Indian consulate in New York that he was okay to go there. But then you have to get all these other papers, and there's a lot of details. You need a passport, a P form, and the travel fare. The passport was not so difficult. He got a passport. He put his address as the Radha Krishna temple in Chippiwada and put his father's name, Gaur Mohan De. Krishna Pandit was a priest at the temple. Prabhupada had the room above that temple. That's now an ISKCON temple. I don't know. Anybody been there?
It's not ISKCON?
Huh?
Or it's not?
It is. They bought it and they fixed up the temple. They're beautiful, beautiful Radha Krishna deities. But the temple was really run down, so the devotees remodeled everything. But they kept Prabhupada's room. It's upstairs, the same. It has a little dome in the middle of the room. That's the deities under the dome. And that was Prabhupada's room in Delhi. It's in Chippiwada. It's just another thing Prabhupada went through. Even now the road is about this wide to get in there. And it's Muslims. The biggest mosque in Delhi is right at the entry. And then there's a little tiny road, and there's Muslims, Hindus, all kinds of people there. And Virbahu Prabhu met a man on the bus or something in India one time. He said, I knew you're Prabhupada. He said when he moved into this area, many of the local people were objecting. They didn't want a sadhu living there. They thought he would pollute the youth. Maybe the Muslims, even the Hindus also. But this man said he defended Prabhupada and convinced the people to let him live there. So that, just a few years ago, the devotees bought that place. And so and now we have full possession of Prabhupada's birthplace in Calcutta, and the place where he met Bhaktisiddhanta. That small house is still there. So he asked his Krishna Pandit to pay for his going abroad, but the Pandit said it's against Hindu principles for a sadhu to go abroad, and it's also very expensive. There's one radio show in New York, and the man asked Prabhupada, isn't it that a Hindu sadhu is not supposed to cross the ocean? So why did you cross the ocean? Prabhupada said, Lord Chaitanya knew I was coming. I don't know where they get that idea, but the man also said it's too expensive. So he had the sponsorship and the passport. Then he went to Bombay to try to get money for printing. And he wanted a ticket to America. He tried approaching Sumati Maharaji. He showed all the papers, and the secretary was impressed and said, the Swamiji from Vrindavan is back. He's published his book with your donation. He has a sponsor and wants to go to America, and he wants you to send him on one of your ships. She said no. Swamiji was too old to go to the United States and to expect to accomplish anything. So Chokshi told Prabhupada. Prabhupada didn't like it. She wanted him to stay in India and complete the Bhagavatam. Why go to the States? First the job here. Prabhupada was fixed on going. And he told Mr. Chokshi, she miss Mrs. Maharaji. He told him what to say. He said, told him to say, I like this gentleman, is very inspired to go to the States and preach something to the people there. But when he told Mrs. Maharaji, she said, the Swami's not healthy, it would be too cold there, he might not be able to come back, and she doubted whether he could be able to accomplish much. People in America were not cooperative, would probably not listen to him. Exasperated with Mr. Chokshi's ineffectiveness, Prabhupada demanded a personal interview, and it was granted. And the gray-haired, determined Bhaktivedanta Swami presented his emphatic request, give me one ticket. Sumarti was concerned, you're too old and you are taking this responsibility. Do you think it's all right? No, he reassured her, lifting his hand as if to reassure her doubting daughter. It is all right, but do you know what my secretaries think? They say, Swami's going to die there. Prabhupada made a face as if to dismiss a foolish rumor, and he insisted that she give him the ticket. All right, she said, get your P form, and I will make an arrangement to send you on our ship. Prabhupada actually said, you don't care if my Guru Maharaj told me to go. I have to go. That's what convinced him. Prabhupada smiled and happily left, past her amazed and skeptical clerks. A P form, another necessity for an Indian national who wants to leave, is given by the State Bank of India, certifying that the person has no excessive debts in India and is cleared by the banks. That would take a while to obtain. He also did not have a U.S. visa. He needed to pursue these government permission in Bombay, but he had no place to stay. So Mrs. Maharaji agreed to let him reside in her Scindia colony of apartments for employees. He stayed in a small unfurnished apartment with only his trunk and typewriter. They all knew that Mrs. Maharaji was sending him to the West, and they became interested in his cause. They were impressed, for although he was so old, he was going abroad to preach. He was a special sadhu. They heard from him how he was taking hundreds of copies of his books with him, but no money. He became a celebrity there. Various families brought him rice, sabji, and fruit, and they brought so much that he could not eat it all. And he mentioned this to Mr. Chokshi. Just distribute it and take it and distribute it. So he advised Swamiji giving remnants of his food to the children, and the older people gathered to listen to him read and speak Bhagavatam. So all this is probably a long time. And another neighbor, he had a veranda that shared. He used to be writing and chanting. I would ask him, Swamiji, what are you writing? He used to sit near the window, and one after another, he was translating the Sanskrit. He gave me 2 books and said, child, if you read this book, you will understand. We would have had discourses in the house, and 4 or 5 Gujarati people would come. So Prabhupada would go out every day trying to get the visa, trying to get the P form, and it was very, very troublesome. And he would come home, and we'd ask him, one day you'll get your target. He'd say, time is still not right. Time is still not right. They're all Agyanis. They don't understand, but I must carry on. Sometimes he would go by, and his chadar would be on the chair, but he would be sitting on the windowsill. I would say, Swamiji, did you have any good contacts? Prabhupada said, not much. I didn't get much, and it's depressing. Tomorrow, Krishna will give me more details. And he would sit there quietly. And after 10 minutes, he'd start writing. and I would think the Swami was so tired one minute, and another minute, even if he was tired, he was not defeated, and he would never speak discouragement. And he would always encourage him and say, if today you don't get it, tomorrow you will definitely meet some people. And the friends used to come in the morning, the evening, and listen to Prabhupada preach. So this is, it's quite inconceivable that Prabhupada didn't come in like, well, I guess you could think like something like Jesus also. The Jews are still waiting for the Messiah to come. The Kalki, I think they think it is, on a white horse and save the day. So this, sadhu from the desert on a donkey didn't really convince them. But he came in a humble, he didn't just, pick up the cross and swing it around and kill everybody. He acted like an ordinary person. Prabhupada also, he went through so much, and his health was not good. When he was going to the printer said, Prabhupada would come and he'd immediately be working, and he'd say, Swamiji, did you eat today? No. And then he'd force him to eat. He was just so determined. And he would also go back to Vrindavan, stay there and write there. And traveling, just, get enough rupees from the back to Godhead to travel to Bombay on the third-class train. I mean, none of us would do that. I did it once by accident. It was really amazing. But Prabhupada did that, he took the bus, he walked a lot. I think he would, to save money on the bus, he would walk to the Andheri or the Santa Cruz, or whatever the next close station, from Juhu. It's pretty far, actually. But just to save a few paisa for the bus fare, and take the train downtown and try to preach. And in this case, he wasn't preaching, he was just trying to get these papers, which means they're just getting banged around from one office to another, like really, really amazing. I've experienced it a little bit. When Prabhu Vishnu came to Bombay, Prabhupada made him the vice president. And he said he didn't like it because he just couldn't stand just sitting in offices for hours and then being told, go to a different office. Day after day after day. And that's what Giriraj Swami had to do. That's what everybody had to do. Gurudas had to do it in Mathura, and Prabhupada had to do it to get to America. So it's a really, and then we all know the result of his getting to America, which wasn't an easy journey. Very severe heart attack on the way. Prabhupada said he was supposed to die, but Krishna kept him alive. And then what he went through in America, more heart attacks, stroke, and then starting a society, and then the society expanding like all of a sudden really fast all over the world. And all of a sudden Prabhupada was like traveling like Narada Muni, just unbelievable. He would just go so many places and come back, trying to build a temple in Bombay, build a temple in Vrindavan, all these things going on. And Mayapur, those are the main projects. So we have to be very grateful and like the Christians say, we have to pick up the cross, carry our own cross, take up the mission. Our life is, Prabhupada has set up so much for us. We have all the books. All we do is call the BBT and order whatever we want. People know about the Bhagavad Gita now. After Prabhupada left, Prabhupada in New York, he would go around all these bookshops and put some books in there on consignment. And the devotees, after Prabhupada's departure, they went around to all the bookshops and they found so many of those Bhagavatams that never sold. Nobody ever heard of the Bhagavatam. Bhagavad Gita, people heard about it, so but not so much. But now Bhagavad Gita is well known, and even people that say they haven't heard of it, they listen and we talk about it. You know, they're interested. They know that there's something beyond the CNN. You know, and we have to give it to them. Our job is, you know, our health is bad, but nothing compared to Prabhupada's condition. But he just did it, you know, unbelievable. So this is the day to remember that. So I'll stop. Any comment or question? Anybody has more information about Prabhupada's trip? Actually, the Prabhupada says he had these 40 rupees, but this Vrindavan Day told Radhanath Swami, Prabhupada gave him the 40 rupees. I mean, he gave him some money. And then when Prabhupada got sick, he wrote to him and told him what doctor to go to and what medicine to get, and Ayurvedic medicine, and sent it to him. He said, you can use that money. I gave you the 40 rupees, I don't know, but absolutely useless in America. It would have just been $7 or something anyway. But Prabhupada got some money when he arrived. There was a tax to enter America. He sold it, one first canoe, to the captain of the ship for $15 or $20, and got the money to get into the country. And after that, you know, in his New York diary, so-and-so said they would come today, but they did not come. Collection 25 cents, or no, you know, $1. Expenses 25 cents for cauliflower, you know, things like that. He was keeping detailed accounts. So many people said they would come, they didn't come. Somebody came and said they'd buy the book next time, but they didn't. But some people would buy the 3 books. Some people would buy 1 book, and they were listening to him, and then all of a sudden, you know, things fell into place. And then we know the rest of the story. But it's really inconceivable. We've been celebrating, you know, Balaram and Krishna, but we don't know, only because of Prabhupada, anybody in America knows about this. Indian people know, but they weren't, when they got to America, most of them didn't care for anything. Prabhupada commented that many times. They would look at this Harinam party and think, what are they doing, you know? We came here to get mundane education. Now it's different because of Prabhupada's endeavor in India for building those temples. The Indians have come very much forward to be devotees, and they know about Prabhupada, and they have the books, and so it's a whole other world now. We have actually a very easy life. We just have to overcome the false ego. All right, anyone?
Some years ago, in New Vrindavan, there was a program that a devotee named, I think, Nitai set up in Butler, Pennsylvania. And we went from New Vrindavan up to Butler, Pennsylvania, where Prabhupada stayed. And Sally Agarwal was there, along with her husband, Gopal Agarwal. Their son didn't come. And it's interesting that when Prabhupada left Butler, Pennsylvania, he stayed in contact with Sally. You know, you might think that was kind of odd. Not only that, but you know, we had a kirtan, and Sally spoke a little while we were there. And she brought out a shoebox full of letters that she had gotten from Prabhupada, which is kind of amazing. Probably many of Prabhupada's, disciples, ones he was really, keen on, who had gotten a lot of association, they didn't have probably as many letters as Sally Agarwal had. When Prabhupada left Butler, Pennsylvania, Sally thought that Prabhupada would probably wind up on the street or something like that, destitute. So they stayed in contact, and it's kind of interesting that somehow or another Prabhupada kept this one relationship alive with someone who would seem kind of unlikely to be the recipient of Prabhupada's mercy in that way. But Prabhupada was very not only grateful, but also, without the Agarwals, Prabhupada never would have been able to leave India. So somehow or other, that was, a very important thing.
Jai. Yeah, and she's been coming to festivals in Vrindavan.
What's that?
She really liked Prabhupada. Prabhupada stayed there only in, 3 weeks or something, not very long. Just to get a feel of America. So,
Kirtan right outside the little place where they don't live there any longer. There was
yeah.
a place. Prabhupada actually stayed in the YMCA, but when Sally and Gopal Agarwal had Prabhupada come to Butler, they were living in a small apartment, so Prabhupada would sometimes take bath there, but he didn't actually stay there. He stayed in the YMCA, and he would walk down Butler, Pennsylvania with his little pointed shoes.
Yeah.
At a time when there were no Indians in America.
Except Gopal Agarwal.
Except Gopal Agarwal, right? He was an engineer.
He's a professor.
He's
Yeah.
the original engineer.
Original Indian.
He's the Adi engineer that came and brought the rest.
He was a professor though at the university, I think. Anyway, it's amazing, and I just was reading a little more. This is all right out of the Lilamrita. I really recommend reading that today. Maybe we'll read that this afternoon, because the details and, how much he had to go every day trying to get this P form from the bank. And somehow he got everything, finally. And the Scindia people, they helped him. Gradually they backed him up, they liked him so much. But determination pays off, and therefore we're here, and Radha Govinda's here, and all these things, It wasn't like Prabhupada just Krishna dropped him out of the sky, and with a, what do they call it,
Magic wand.
Amex black credit card or something, where you can just buy anything in the universe and do whatever you want, he was completely on his own. But he never felt that way because he always felt the presence of Krishna and Guru. And then just before he left, he went to Mayapur and he went to the Samadhi of Bhaktisiddhanta. And he also went to Shantipur, and he actually went there often, in the Advaita temple. They were friends of his, and he was praying and chanting, and the Pujari said, and Prabhupada said, my spiritual master has given me an impossible task, But that was like the last place he went. That's where we had the festival every year, in Prasadam, for Madhavendra Puri's disappearance day. The super auspicious spot in Mayapur that most people don't know about. They don't think about it so much. But Advaita lived there, Haridas Thakur lived there, Madhavendra Puri lived there. Prabhupada went to that temple and prayed. That's where Advaita worshipped Shalagram, and It's not an ordinary place, but it's out of the way a little bit. Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Radha Govinda ki jai.
That festival
And,
is always near Gaur Purnima, right?
huh?
That festival is always.
Yeah, it's right before Gaur Purnima. Dwadasi before Gaur Purnima, Madhavendra Puri's disappearance. Hare Krishna.
His Holiness Kavichandra Maharaj ki jai.
I didn't do much, but that was a good story about